All right, seventh grade, we are continuing right along here. It says write and solve an equation to answer the question. Now, a formula that I want you to be aware of is A equals percent times W. A is part of the whole, P is the percent, W is the whole group. All right, so A is part of the whole, W is the whole group. Write and solve an equation to answer the question. 30% of 160 is what number? 30% of 160 is what number? So if I'm going to use this formula, A equals percent times W. I don't know what part of the group it is. I'm trying to figure out what part of the group is at 30%. So it's going to say A equals 30% times the whole group, which is 160. If I take 30% and I turn that into a decimal, 30, the decimal would go there. I'd move it twice to the left. I'd end up with 0.30 or 0.3, which means I pretty much have to do 160 times 0.3 or 3/10. Well, 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 6 is 18. Put the 8 down, carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. One number after the decimal there, one number after the decimal there. I get 48.0. A equals 48. 42 is what? So that's the whole 30% of 160 is what number? 48 is equivalent to 30%. So it's almost the same as what we were doing with the proportions. It's just now they want you to work with equations. So it's just a different way of solving the same sort of problem. 42 is what percent of 30? Well, we know what the part is. The part is 42. Now you may say, well, Mr. Sweck, 42 is bigger than 30. But it's asking for what percent 42 is, which means 42 has to be the part. 30 is the whole. Now, it's bigger, so we know it's going to be bigger than 100%. But that's what we're doing here. 42 equals percent times the whole. Now, the whole, I should actually go ahead and replace this with 30. So essentially, 42 divided by 30. Now, I'm going to do this. I could do it as a decimal, okay, if I wanted to, but instead I'm going to go ahead and work it as a fraction, just to show you that fractions are division. 42 divided by 30. Both of these numbers are even, so I can divide them both by 2. 42 divided by 2 is 21. 30 divided by 2 is 15. 21 and 15 are both divisible by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So I get 7 over 5. But now my job is to figure out what this is as a percent. Now, if I needed to, I would have to divide this, which would be easier to divide because it's smaller numbers. But if you use some quick mental math, you're going to know that 5 can go into 100 evenly. And remember, when we think about percent, we're always thinking about the number 100. 100 divided by 5 is 20, so I know that 5 times 20 equals 100. 10 divided by 5 is 2, add that 0. So I'd also have to do 7 times 20. 7 times 20 is 140. 140 over 100 is equivalent to 140%. 140% of what number is 28? Well, that was not planned, that we're just sticking with 140%, but that's the way it worked out. 140% of what number is 28? Okay, so once again, we know what part of the whole is. Part of the whole is 28, because 28 represents the 140%. We also know that that equals percent times the whole group, which in this case, it's going to be 140. But remember, it's 140%. So I want to turn it into a decimal, okay? Which means I'm going to take the decimal and I'm going to move it twice to the left, so I get 1.40 or 1.4. So essentially I end up with 28 equals 1.4 times W, which means essentially I'm doing 28 divided by 1.4. Or if I want to make this a 14, I can move the decimal here, and 28 wouldn't be there, but I'd move it over once and become 280. I can do 280 divided by 14. Well, I know that 14 cannot go into 2, but it can go into 28 twice. 2 times 14 is indeed 28. 28 minus 28 is 0. Drop this 0, and 14 can go into 0 times. And I find that W equals 20. That's the whole group. 28 is 140% of 20. All right, let's go ahead and bring in the next board here. Got one more example like this. 0.6% of 150 is what number? 0.6% of 150 is what number? So once again, if I have the A equals percent times the whole group, all right, I know that I don't know what part of the whole is. Part of the whole is A. I don't know, but I do know that it's 0.6%, and we're multiplying that by W. Now, 0.6% already has a decimal, but it's not a decimal. Remember, it's a percent. So I have to take the decimal and move it twice to the left, and I end up with 2 zeros. So essentially, I end up with A equals 0.006 W. Now I know what the whole group is. The whole group is 150. So I'm doing 150 times 0.006. Now, I like to do this where I'm just pretending I'm multiplying it by 6, because all those zeros over here aren't going to make any difference. So I'm just multiplying this by 6. 6 times 0 is 0. 6 times 5 is 30. Put the 0 down, carry the 3. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. I get 900, but I have to remember that I need 1, 2, 3 numbers after the decimal. So 1, 2, 3. I put the decimal here. I get 0.900, or just 0.9. 0.6% of 150 is what number? A equals 0.9. A salesperson receives a 3.5% commission on sales. What commission does the person receive for $6,000 in sales? So once again, we don't know what the part is. That's what we're trying to find. We do know the percent, which is 3.5%, and we know the whole thing, which is 6,000. So essentially, I have to take my 3.5% once again, 1, 2, and that becomes 0.035, and I need to multiply that by 6,000. So essentially, we are taking 6,000 and multiplying that by 0.035. Now, as a 7th grader, I want you to really start to think about how you can make different